Very excited about our next guest. Scott Ballin has been involved in these issues for a while. This country used to smoke a ton of tobacco. It's smoking a lot less. One of the reasons is the hard work of our health policy consultant guest, Scott Ballin. Hey, Scott, welcome to the Ed Tyll Show on Starcom Radio Network.
Pleasure to be with you.
Dude, it is a pleasure to be with you. I'm old enough to remember cigarettes were 35 cents a pack, and I could buy them from my uncle. I could go in there, and they would hand them to me, and they knew I didn't even know what was going on. You handed them over to your uncle. Then we found out it was dangerous and cancerous, and, you know, it was my favorite arc of the Mad Men series when that was all hitting. Awesome. And I know you've got great news today. This is big news. The number of people smoking in America, I'll let you announce it. But before you give the number, I see this as a Herculean accomplishment. Can you elaborate on what it took to get us here?
Well, it's taken far too long to do it. And one of the things that I don't think people realize is that while we're making progress, it's not good enough. There are still millions of adult smokers out there, and kids are still taking up the habit. We've reduced it down to about 16% of the adult population. It used to be much, much higher than that. So we're making progress. But I got to remind people, cigarette smoking still is the number one preventable cause of death in this country. Cancer, heart disease, stroke, and other things. And the concern that I have as a public health person, having been in this for 40 years, is we've got some new potential strategies that can be implemented that actually will help smokers get off the addictive habit of smoking and hopefully eventually quit.
Scott, you have to, and here's why. I was talking about this before our interview. Everywhere virtually in America that I've broadcast, and it's been coast to coast and across the heartland, since we've changed the indoor smoking laws, it can be negative 25 degrees outside. And in bare hands, blue-collar, hard-working, maybe not MBAs, but hard-working sweat people, the real guts of the American workforce, they see this as their personal trade-off because they can't afford Klonopin, therapy, any of it. This is what they get. They can't take a hit of scotch. They can't go inside and get a beer. But when it's driving them to the edge, they puff on that cigarette, and you're right. They risk their lives. Can we supply something for them? Can we help them put it in their hands for the same price, dirt cheap, and cigarettes have skyrocketed, but working class where they get something similar to like this 2-minute break?
Yeah, absolutely. This is what has changed. The technology has changed. The products have changed. I don't think people really fully understand, and I've seen surveys of this. A lot of people think that it's the nicotine that kills you when it's not. It's the smoke. You burn something, inhale it into your lungs, and there are thousands of chemicals that cause disease and death. Now, there are new products, and there have been products out there for a while that are 95% lower in risk than a cigarette. And that includes not only the sort of patches and gums that the pharmaceutical companies have been making for years, but also new novel products such as e-cigarettes. Swedish snus, Swedish Match, a company out of Sweden, makes a product that could replace cigarettes. You get your nicotine fix, but without all of the toxins in the smoke. So you've got e-cigarettes products out there. You've got some new products coming out from old tobacco companies. And these things, these products such as they're called heat not burn, that doesn't create smoke, it creates a vapor, and you get your nicotine and your satisfaction of a tobacco taste. These are products that are in the pipeline to be coming out and being reviewed and approved by our Food and Drug Administration. And that's a very important component of all this. The companies are not allowed to get away with the kinds of things that you were talking about happened many years ago of marketing aggressively to people. These are going to be regulated products, but the American consumer, those diehard smokers that you just mentioned, have got to have options and have got to be educated that there are alternatives out there. Right now, that isn't happening, and that is where we need to be headed.
I'm with you 1,000%, and it's you know what I mean. It's got to really get to the corner store, to the bodega. It's got to be within the reach of the other one. You know, this is all what plays into it. But I do want to get to another area that I think you've got a lot to share with us. Your background is amazing as to how long you've been in this. Would you share with our listeners from the American Heart Association experience, from your scientific review of the studies, what is it that the public doesn't seem to get? Is the whole story fully understood? And that we just have a streak in us as Americans? You know something? They can't tell me what to do, even if they make sense. It's my trade-off. It's my body. There's only so far they can come. How do we crack, or what do we not know about cracking the code that breaks down smoking once and for all? What have you learned over the years?
Well, I've learned that it's fine. We took on the tobacco industry aggressively, and in the 80s and 90s, I worked to get major hearings on Capitol Hill, get the legislation passed that gave FDA authority over all tobacco products. What we don't know, we're sort of stuck in a time warp of trying to deal with those same old things, but the whole environment has changed. The products have changed. The companies have changed. And I'm not talking just about the tobacco companies. I'm talking about the fact that there are companies that are making e-cigarettes, and they're doing it in a very scientific and accepting regulation. What we have to do is change the way we approach, our mental approach to this issue, and understand that it's not the nicotine that kills you, it's the smoke and the cigarette. If we could get rid of combustible cigarettes and give people alternatives that will allow them to make choices to get themselves off the deadly product, we will reduce the level of disease and death in this country significantly, and also reduce the health care cost. Smoking causes about $300 billion in lost health care costs and productivity. That is what we all pay as taxpayers. So we've got a major, a major mental shift to make about how we approach this issue that we haven't made just yet. But I will tell you that knowing the people that I know out there, they're beginning to understand that the future lies in getting people off a deadly cigarette, which is why the Great American Smokeout that happens this week is so important. But it's got to be also focused on providing people with alternatives. You just can't tell people to stop smoking and expect that they're going to do it, as you mentioned. We've got to give them acceptable alternatives that they can use to get off the deadly habit.
The Great American Smokeout, this Thursday, November 16th, every year on the third Thursday of November. Your assessment in how this annual reminder, this social pressure, if you will, has succeeded, because it seems like it has big time. I give a lot of credit to the Great American Smokeout. How do you assess its success?
I think its greatest value has occurred over the last few decades. But what I suggest today is that I would like to see the Great American Smokeout start focusing on what are also viable tobacco and nicotine alternatives for people who can't stop. I mean, as I said, there's great suggestions and ideas that the Cancer Society puts out there in helping people on this day to quit. But we also have to provide the products for people to, if they can't quit on their own, or all these programs and activities don't necessarily work, we've got to make a mind shift and start providing products that actually will help them get off the deadly habit. And that's where we're headed now. Now, FDA has announced in July of this year that the whole concept of harm reduction and being able to provide people with these products is going to be a major priority for them. And that is a major step forward. And over the coming months and years, we're going to see a major shift in the way we deal with cigarettes. And hopefully they will be gone in the next 5 to 10 years, and people will be able to get their nicotine from another form and actually quit as well.
Scott, what a great job. Thank you. I really appreciate your time today. This is big, big news. Our guest for more than 10 years served as the American Heart Association's vice president and legislative counsel. He then put in time on the steering committee of the Alliance for Health, Economic, and Agricultural Development. He has also worked tirelessly against smoking at every step of the way. The National Coalition for Smoking and Health. just an incredible resource for us today. Congratulations, Scott Ballin, on the success and the continued success of reducing smoking in America. It's the Ed Tyll Show on Starcom Radio Network. News, weather, traffic, and sports.